So we are recording. Okay, so sorry, I had not started the recording earlier. Yeah, so we have this encounter database manager, and we have this annotation to make sure that it's discoverable by Spring, or Spring Boot in this case. And yeah, so the protocol we're using is SQLite, and we pass in the database name. I've explained how that name is injected. If anything goes wrong, we throw this runtime exception. And then we wrote a test which determines that we can actually connect to that database. So this test just brings in that encounter database manager, and it attempts to open a connection to the file-based database SQLite, and we just ascertain that we don't get like a null database connection, and we actually connect to the database file that has the same name as the one we've requested. And the one we've requested in this case is available in the application properties for the tests. Yeah, so the other function here is this create schema function. And what the create schema function was just obtaining a connection and then running this simple SQL query, which is create table if not exists. The reason why we are using if not exists is every time you run the application, this query will likely be executed, and it's meant to bootstrap the schema just in case the schema was not there yet. The schema is rather simple. It is representing this patient model, and what the patient model has is a UUID, a name, and a DOB. In the previous section, so we're using records for the patient model. We discussed this at length last time, and what we concluded was records would allow us to enjoy immutability in defining our models, because this is not like a management class or a class that would be handling functionality. It's just defining a model, and it's the ideal case for the use of record types, because records are immutable. We get some runtime optimization, and also we know that when we create a patient, that patient will not be modified later, which is also potentially a security thing. In the previous session, we went really deep into these validators. So we're able to plug in the validators for this patient. And here we were able to validate the name, the DOB, and the UID. So if somebody creates a patient and the name is blank, or date of birth is null, or UID is blank, then it would throw this assertion error and passing the message. We discussed this at length last time, and we even wrote a test for it. Yes, Ian? Oh yeah, we need a validator, one of the validator libraries, right? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would like, the whole idea of this session is to explore multiple paths, so we can explore that if you want. We could have them in annotations, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I think I shared this in the WhatsApp group. I saw somebody doing this, and I didn't know records. You can add record annotations to records fields. So I thought they would be very plain. So I think, yeah. So we would need to pull in. I think one of the validator libraries. I can't remember which one specifically. Maybe. Yeah, but you still have to pass in the assertion logic. Let me just read the question. Doesn't record already handle assertions automatically? Also, curious question. Yeah. I think the only assertion that records Okay, throwing the assertion error, I think it still depends on you passing the logic, but again, let's explore that. So let's say we pass in these rules, and we don't have our own assertion errors here thrown. So what I'm expecting is this will still require me to pass in the logic of what should happen. Like an example, yes, Nelly? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting assertion, and I think the best way to prove it is through experimentation. So, interesting thing is we actually wrote validation tests. So, this test is supposed to make sure that anytime we create a patient, the name is not blank and all the fields are valid. So if the record is able to do that automatically for us, this test should ideally pass. We shouldn't find those assertions. Um, Maybe we I think let's experiment with that before we explore this annotations idea. Uh, Yeah, so for those who are new, the goal here is not to finish the project, is to explore different programming methods and code design ideas. So if we get diverted, that's actually the hope. Okay, so there's this test that we wrote last time, and this test checks if, okay, the name is a bit misleading because it's checking all the tests. Checking all the fields. Um, so let's say it throws if patient is invalid. So what this is supposed to do is if we pass in, if we try to initialize a patient that has invalid fields, like they are very clearly named invalid name, invalid UID, then we expect an assertion error to be thrown. Like previously we had assertion errors. So if the record is able to throw the assertions automatically, this test should pass. I think the only thing that will fail is the error message here, which for this exploration I think I can comment. But ideally, if that's the case, I think we should be able to get the assertion errors, or at least some kind of error. Or if it throws a different kind of error, we should be able to see that. So I'll just go ahead and run it. So the way it does it is you just have this assert thrown by assertion from assert j. And what this does is allows to capture and then assert on a throwable. So it checks if this lambda or this block of code is executed, does it throw the exception? If it throws the particular exception, the test passes. If it fails to throw, the test fails. So it's basically testing that your code will fail as expected with the specific error message. So in this case, initialization of new patient should fail if the patient is invalid. So I'll just go ahead and run this and let's see what happens. Okay, so it seems to throw expected code to raise a throwable. So I think, yeah, it failed to throw the assertion error. It seems it didn't throw any error class per se. Nelly, do you want to comment, or does this negate your assumption? Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't do it automatically, right? Yes, Joe? Okay, so then that means if we use annotations like the not blank, not null annotations from whichever annotation library, then the annotation library will not be able to validate initialization at runtime. Essentially, it's supposed to fail, right? Mm. Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's totally true. Because with the compact, what we implemented last time is the self option. We use the compact constructor, which we know anytime a new record is a new instance of the record is being initialized, the execution has to pass through that compact constructor. So we get a chance to run some custom code as this new object is being created. So I guess the interesting thing is what would happen if we tried to use annotations? If we assumed this is like a plain Pojo class, if this is like a plain old Java object and we um, creatively just try to use annotations like the example I shared on the WhatsApp group, I think uh, maybe it would be interesting to explore what happens, right? Okay. But at least we're able to verify that we would with the validation won't be done for us automatically, except there's one specific area that Nelly was right about is oh wait, we can be yeah because it's blank checks for whether the string is has uh, 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 like it checks that the string if the string has only one white space. Okay, the string is it checks that the string is not just white space characters. So in a way, it doesn't just check for empty. So I think that would still be valid. If we just did is empty, I think is empty would still work because you can initialize and pass an empty string or pass a blank string. You can pass null here because there is no nullability check during initialization, and the same for the UID. Okay, let's explore the annotation angle. So I'll just go to our yes, whatever it is. Oh, okay. So I'm going to our version of npm. This is Maven repository, our package manager, and I'm going to look for this JavaX validator. I think has those annotations. There's a Hibernate one, but we are not using Hibernate. That will be overkill. I think the JavaX. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, by the way, it could be there. Oh, okay. It's surprising because it's supposed to be Jakarta library. Uh, Start. Oh, yeah, it's them when they moved from Java EE to Jakarta, they changed the package. So Java EE libraries are under Java dot something dot something, and then the Jakarta EE libraries are under Javax dot maybe validator dot yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, yeah, it is actually. Thanks for that. I hope this is. Oh no, this has been validation with Hibernate. Uh, yeah, this will probably require us to use Hibernate. Let me switch to Maven and see. I can't read Gradle because it's a whole other programming language. It has Groovy, and I've never written Groovy. Let's see. Spring Boot starter validation. Okay, so it brings in. Okay, it's probably embedded within Spring Boot starter validation, but I wanted us to use something plain. Why can't I remember? Could it be under the annotation API? Javax annotation. Let's try this. Maybe it's wrapped in here. If somebody in the chat knows where we can find those annotations, and it's not where we are looking, please comment. So I'll just add this one to our dependencies, and then we can see. So I've just added that Javax annotation thing. I'll run maven clean install to pull it if it's already not already in my system. And okay, that should do it. Then let's see. Not blank. Oh, okay, that's not there. That's for artifact class. Kennedy, we are looking for these validator annotations that we find in Hibernate, but we want the Jakarta ones. Which dependency should we use? Tumemkaribisha na moto. Yeah, I've tried Javax annotation API, which doesn't have it. Otherwise, unless yeah, I can't remember. Oh, okay. Okay. Jcast artifact. Yeah, it should be. Yeah. Yeah, why is it so hard to find? Yeah, it's javax.validation API. Thanks so much for that, Lenny. Sorry, Nelly. I have a friend his name is Lenny. So sorry about that. Nelly, thanks for that. So Maven. Yeah, this is the one. I don't know why searching there was not like resolving it. Yeah. Okay. So this should have the annotations. Yeah, that resolved. Thank you again, Nelly. So we can have not blank for that, not blank again, not null is, not null, and we can get rid of our compact constructor and go back to running our tests, see what happens. Okay, so Ian, I think you see what is happening. We didn't get an assertion error per se, and our tests are looking for assertion errors. So maybe we can just try a plain initialization. Some patient is equals to new patient, and then with this patient we just pass a blank UID, a blank name, and a null DOB. I don't need to, okay, I can maybe throw in an assertion, assert that some patient dot is not null. But if it's to fail, it should fail before we even get to. Why does that import? That import looks weird. Shouldn't assertions import static assertion assert J. Oh, okay, assert that. Yeah, I mean, looked a bit strange. I don't think it's the same import. Okay. Yeah, so this should not work. The annotation validation should pick that up. Maybe let me ask Ian, what do we expect to happen now that we have the annotations? Yeah. Okay. I'm expecting something like constraint validation exception or something like that, right? But does it automatically throw the exception, or there's another component of Spring that checks the validation and then throws it? Okay. Yeah, so if that's the case, then we expect if we run our test, then it should throw some exception. Okay. Okay, let's try that. See what happens. Back to the test. So on the test here, let's see if that exception class is available to us. Constraint validation. Oh, okay. I can't remember the exact name, but it should be. Yeah. The constraint declaration exception. Yeah, constraint violation exception. I think that's the one. So I'm going to be optimistic and expect that the system will automatically throw that if we try to initialize this with these incorrect fields, and our annotations actually pick it up that we are trying to initialize those incorrect fields. Yeah, let's see. Personally, I'm expecting it not to work, but it's interesting. So yeah, we didn't get a constraint validation exception. I think within Spring, there's a component that is supposed to check those annotations and throw the exceptions. And since we are running like a plain project where we are not relying so much on or invoking that Spring validator, maybe that's why the constraint validation is being thrown. Mm-hmm. Mm. Oh, oh. Yeah, so this validation happens when you receive like a HTTP request or on one of your REST endpoints, and then it is trying to serialize or deserialize the object that came in. So, so as it does the serialization, deserialization, it checks the fields, and if one of the fields doesn't match your annotation, it throws the constraint violation, right? Mm. Yeah, but that would work in the context of maybe we are writing some REST endpoint, and we are like offloading this to Spring. So I guess in our context, since it's a plain model, yeah, it won't work. And at least now we know why, right? Anybody lost, you can ask a question. Um, Kennedy is saying mic is not working. Okay, yeah, yeah. No worries. You can just type on the chat. I'll check it out. If I don't see it, Ian or Stephen or the others will notify me. Okay, so any questions about what we have just experimented with here? And also, there's something that Joe mentioned about the annotations requiring reflection for them to to kind of validate those the fields that they are supposed to check. So it will be interesting when we get to doing like a REST endpoint for this. We try and run the same validation kind of strategy that we've done here for something that's coming through the wire. Like a payload that's coming from like a HTTP request, and then we add that valid annotation on that endpoint and kind of see whether it will be able to check those fields. And although it will be able to check the fields because it will be initializing a new object for us to handle. Yeah, but we'll experiment with it. Again, feel free to unmute if you want to add anything. Okay. Okay, something like validator factory, factory validator, validation.build default factory. Then you create a validator, factory.get validator, and then set constraint violation. Yeah, so I guess this will be re-implementing what Spring does with that at valid annotation, right? Mm. Low level because Spring does it for you. It's supposed to be high level. Yeah. Okay. So let's just proceed now that we've experimented with some of these. So I think we can go back to how things were. So we know these annotations won't work in this context, but maybe in some other context they'll become useful. So we have a compact construction. When something doesn't check out, we throw that session error, and I can bring this probably to where it was, and yeah, maybe the name change was good. Okay, so this is where we were, and this test was written to just ensure that every time a new patient object is being created, validation is being done on that object through the logic we had in the compact constructor. What do you mean? No, why? I'm curious why you don't like tests. But the users don't interact with code; they interact with the final application. But some components of your application are just code the users will never interact with. Okay, anyway, interesting take there. I know, I know. What a way to introduce yourself. Yeah, unajua Morris. Oh, okay. Yes. Haya. Before meeting ishe tutakwambia enable video tukuone. Okay, nice. Where were we? We I think I explained that. So the way we concluded last time is we discussed why what kind of mechanics records use here and this compact constructor. So then maybe we can go back to the encounter database manager. So there's this function that we failed to explore further last time because we kind of ran out of time. And like I mentioned, we have this simple SQL query that is supposed to create the database table. And I've explained why we have this if not exists, because unlike if we were using something like Hibernate or Spring Data JBE, the database migrations would be done automatically for us. But since we are using plain SQLite, this is basically our migration script. So anytime you launch the application, this is supposed to execute and set up your schema. The things that are happening here is we have the query, then we obtain the connection object, like so, by calling this getConnection function. And then we use that connection object to create a statement, and we use the statement to execute this query. So you could even pass this string here directly and it would still be able to execute. Interesting thing is you can have multiple queries here, and when you execute the statement, all the queries would be executed. And if anything goes wrong, SQLite will return whichever wording or error that happened by calling this statement to get warnings. So here we were just checking that warning is not null and warning message is blank, just to make sure there was no interesting or unexpected thing that happened during the execution. And then we return true. And the test we wrote for it was very simple. It just calls encounter database manager.create schema, which is that function. And if you notice, the encounter database manager create schema returns a boolean, and we just check that boolean is true. We could go further with this the test of this function by checking each execution step to make sure that every step is executed by perhaps using a mock, which I don't know if you guys want to explore that. The test that I'm proposing is, can we check that although we are getting true, that statement.execute is called, that getConnection is called, but I don't think that would be super important. Does anybody want us to explore that path? You can maybe raise your hand and we try it out, or we can move on to more data modeling, maybe create the next object. Yeah, Nelly saying I'd avoid these people. Yeah, you're right, Nelly. Okay. So let's move forward. The next thing that I'm hoping we should do is bring in the repository pattern and create a patient repository. The patient repository can just handle CRUD functions, create, update, delete, by calling some of the functions that are available in Encounter Database Manager, or at least utilizing Encounter Database Manager. Because later on, once we have the repository, we'll use that repository on the service layer, and up we go until we get to the REST endpoints. So here, let's see. So we have the patient. I'll just create another Java class. Call it patient repository. Before I proceed, is Joe still on the chat? Joe, is it possible to nest? Something interesting I saw. You can nest records within records, right? So is it possible for us to maybe have one record? We call it encounter model, and then we declare all patient, appointment, all the models we want within that record. Okay. Yeah, let's try that so that we don't end up creating multiple files for each. Yes? Oh, you are testing the mic. Or like a sealed interface? Or just a normal interface? Okay. The only thing I'm worried about is if we do that, we will lose the domain-driven design approach where each package handles specific models. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so including patient. Okay. Okay. I know. They are like plumbing. It's like you are doing plumbing where you connect this pipe with this pipe and that pipe, instead of just having one pipe do the the job. Um, mhm. Okay. And since you're not going to implement this interface anywhere, do you make it sealed? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. My worry is probably because this is not a regular class, so we cannot make the default constructor private. Would somebody, maybe someone who is new to the code base, try to instantiate patient DTO for something? Okay. So, but in the case where a madman breaks into your company headquarters and grabs one of the computers and tries to do that, is there a way you can secure the DTO from being instantiated? Okay. Yeah, yeah. The worry is I don't know how to do it. I don't have a method in mind. I was thinking sealed interfaces, but then also, if if you seal the interface that they are not accessible outside the package, I think within the package you'll still be able to maybe try to implement that interface, right? Mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it will be safe. Mm. Yes.
Joe is raising a hand. I think he has a better explanation than mine.
Hey Joe, you can respond.
Actually, I agree with, is it Kennedy? Yeah. What he's saying. But, and actually, you can, the interface is the best way. For me, I usually use the interface because, for example, I don't think you're going to use only patient in your, for your DTOs. Maybe you have other form of data. So if you use cell types, you'll be able now to use actually pattern matching. For example, if you're obtaining a specific object, you can use the switch pattern just to convert it to different types of records if you want. But for me, I usually use interfaces, and then so that no one misuses them, I put seal, and then all the records declared inside, I just say implements patient DTO, all that way, so that no one can extend that interface or implement that interface. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so you can add more records as long as they, but you have to think about data modeling, how records, whether they fall under certain category, etc. But yeah, that's the, and then later on you can now use pattern matching for specific refinements if you want a specific record.
Yeah. So with this, if a madman breaks into the headquarters and tries to implement this interface, at least there'll be something keeping them from implementing it, right?
Yes.
So I think, Kennedy, we have a solution to the madman scenario. What do you think of?
Yeah.
So you cannot go ahead and secure your code base against madmen.
Yeah, if there's a madman, they'll try everything they think. But whatever Joe has said, I think I agree with that completely.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we have the ultimate design. Anybody else want to comment before I proceed?
Yeah, a junior, I want to contribute. These are like, so it means like whenever you need like sort of like an instance each of like, say for example a patient,
Mm-hmm.
it means you have to do like something like patient details dot.
Not necessarily. I'm seeing our test is still okay, so you don't have to. You can just do new patient and access it.
Oh, does that already happen for your details?
You still have an object.
Oh
patient.
yeah. Oh, I have an external object. Okay. Let me get rid of this to actually see the truth. Yeah. Okay. So
Danger.
danger.
You have to call the dot or import explicitly.
Inakwanga static kama hii.
It's a public static.
Oh,
New.
okay.
Static, no? Okay.
So I could do this, or I could import patient DTO.
But I rarely do dot. I don't care about any reading or anything.
Okay.
Dot. You can do dot hapo.
Like that. Oh, okay. I think I see
Yeah.
it. So you can do dot like that. Oh no, that won't work.
Either uko juu ama hapo kwa patient you do patient details or patient.
Oh, okay. But if you want to import once, then all import maybe.
You can do that, and everything from that interface will be available.
Okay. And I can even do that. Maybe. Yeah. Ian, what do you think?
So that's cleaner.
Yeah, because having all of them have to run through here and do patient, it will just make an already lengthy.
Chaotic.
Yeah, it will just make it more chaotic. So
Java is already long enough in terms of naming and stuff. So.
yeah, just look at this as that thrown by, and again you add this, it might make it too painful. You might need one of those wide monitors for you to write this. Okay, so this is very interesting. So we've found a way of grouping together multiple records within one file, and at the same time we found a way of securing, maybe securing is a strong word, but limiting the implementation or the use of those instances, that somebody doesn't assume that interface is just another interface that you can implement, and maybe because somebody else would, it's very possible for somebody else to just start plugging in functions into this interface. Like I could do void do something, perhaps. Okay, I'm not allowed to do that, but it's an interface. Patient must implement abstract method. Okay, so you can't just go ahead and treat it like a regular interface.
Unless you put default.
Oh, okay. At least you have to even that still extension method. Okay.
And curly brackets. Yeah.
Okay, at least it's very restrictive. But what I was thinking is, if we didn't have sealed, if we didn't limit the interface, maybe you would just be able to declare. Okay, still it's restricted. Abstract.
Because you have removed the default.
Oh yeah. Okay, but now the records don't. Oh yeah, because of the implements. So if we get rid of that, so you see, if it's a regular interface, some madman who breaks into the office might start doing crazy things like this, where now this stops being an interface where we declare our records to an interface where we have abstract methods. So, okay, but this I think this is really good design, where we're able to be able to, one, group everything together, and two, be able to again restrict the things that we group together.
Yeah, but it would be a nuisance when you have those means. No. Kennedy. Itakuwa a nuisance when you have like many videos, but it's not any nuisance.
Sorry, sijakusikia.
Like it would be a sort of like a nuisance when you have like very many related videos. Kama zile za patient request DTO ya patient.
Actually, yeah, this is the best way of doing it. You see, me, okay, personally, I don't like having multiple files za hizo DTOs. I don't like it. So I declare a single interface and have all the million DTOs in that interface.
It's called a god of DTOs. That's a lot, to be honest. Yeah. In a reduce like your packaging difficulty. Makes sense.
And actually, these are DTOs that are related. They belong to patients. So see it in the kuwa na another domain and then have their details in this interface. So they make sense.
Yeah, and the fact that you could just like import them statically in Zakwa.
Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, interesting. So at least that's something that we've seen, and I think it's good design. Instead of having many files that are related to just this domain, you can just have a sealed interface and plug in as many. So in future, if we have another model that is related to patient and it doesn't fit in some different domain, then we can just add it here instead of creating multiple files. So I think that's interesting. And also I think all our tests still succeed with that change.
Actually, to mention something also,
Yep.
for those who don't like using mappers, you can, in this patient, this record patient, you can have a method there, say from something, like let's say you have a patient now entity. So this is a patient, let's say request or something, DTO. So inside this record, you have a method like to entity or something, or from entity. So instead of having another library to do the mapping, like the map strike or something, so you're doing everything yourself inside these records. You have everything under this record thing. Okay. Conversion from your DTO to your entity, and to your entity, from your entity to your DTO directly inside this record. So you just call the method. You make them static and public.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you are plumbing code essentially for moving from mapping from one object to another. You can have them within this sealed interface, right?
Yeah. You're just reducing the need for you having more libraries in your project. So reducing them, you do things manually. And one of the things that you'll be doing is that conversion, which is very easy actually. Most of the time, we don't really need the mapping libraries. I would say, in my opinion, most of the time.
Interesting. But this would be there would have to be a default method.
No, like inside, you see this record patient inside this record now, you have a method.
Or within the patient resource method record.
Yeah, now inside it.
Okay.
So you declare a public static method, like a public static. And then you say this is now from entity to resource. You can call it from entity or mapping or whatever. Okay. And then now you return a new patient resource, mapping the field now from entity to this patient resource.
Okay. So maybe like to resource, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And it receives an entity and returns a resource, for example.
Yeah, and now you find when you are doing the functional programming in streams, when you are now streaming, it is easier to call the method reference to resource when mapping, when you're doing now the mapping.
Okay, within a stream, because the function is available within patient DTO, right?
Exactly. So everything now becomes easier from whatever you are modeling inside this record.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. I think we'll end up doing all of that when we are writing the service layer, right?
Actually.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yes, Joe?
Actually, Kennedy, if Brian Goetz heard you say this, he'll be very happy. Usually he terms it as transforming one record to the other. Yeah, he tends to love using that terminology. Yeah. So if you have one data, you can transform it to another data. So that's the essence of records. You map from one data type to another, which makes it easy to chain data as a statement. Yeah.
I think they call it data-driven design.
design focuses on the memory layout. This is programming, data-oriented programming.
Oh, yeah, sorry, data-oriented programming. I mistook that. Yeah, they call it data-oriented programming, right? Okay. I hope I didn't interrupt you, Joy. You are done.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So this was just an example to see what we can potentially be able to do. We will definitely be writing something like this because we'll have an endpoint. We'll need to like convert back and forth between what we're exposing to clients and what we have persisted. Yeah. So let's write this repository. Tempted to have a parent interface because it will be implemented by all repositories. So maybe under core, we can create a parent interface. Maybe I can call it encounter repository, and this encounter repository will have our CRUD functions. So for it to work, it will need to be generic. I hope I remember how to write generics. So we have the entity. I'll prescribe that as E, and then so anytime we are doing a database transactions, and here I'm just copying Spring Data JBE. So when you're doing a database transactions on the database side to maybe the service layer, you'll need to have an entity and a particular ID, maybe for find by ID queries. So I'll have E for entity and ID for whichever ID type we are using. So I'm using generics. If anyone in the audience is not familiar with generics, you can just raise your hand and ask. I'm sure there is somebody here who can summarize it. But basically, I'm just trying to make sure that this encounter repository can be used by any entity, patient included. And one rule of using interfaces, you don't create an interface unless it's going to have multiple implementations. So this is one interface that I'm sure will have multiple implementations. For every entity we have, they'll probably end up implementing encounter repository. So this encounter repository should be able to implement CRUD functions, that is create. So maybe we can start with the create function. So when we are creating, I'm hoping we can return a value for testing. So we return a boolean, use the typical name of save. Maybe make it a bit sophisticated, save or update. So if the value is already present on the database, it will update. If it's not, it will save. Okay, let me separate them. Let me just separate them. Then we pass in the entity, and we return boolean. So that is the create function. Update function should return the updated entity. Update, and if it fails to update, I think you can make it optional. So if it fails, it should return an optional empty. If it succeeds, it should return a value, and it just pass in the updated entity. Then so that's update, create, read. Let's do read. So read should be multifaceted. There should be find by ID. Again, optional, so that if it doesn't find, it just returns an empty. Find by ID, and here it will pass the ID. And then the very famous find all, which won't be optional in this case, just be a list. So if it fails, it should give us an empty list. List of those entities, find all. Create, read, update. Yeah, then we can do delete, which should delete the value. So if it succeeds, just get a boolean. So delete, and here just pass in let's do delete by ID and then we delete by object. We do delete by object. So here we just get the ID and we can do delete, which deletes by object, deletes by the whole entity object. Yes? Yes, Patrick?
Sam, let us not do find out because now you are letting the man to.
Sorry?
Okay, let's not do the find out because we consider it anti-pattern. Yes, because now someone will just go find out and do the filtering from the application.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Yeah, I've not got to a point where I had it be called an anti-pattern, but you're right. If we have the find all there, it can become a problem performance-wise, because everybody will just be pulling all and then applying the filters on the Java side of things instead of defining custom queries, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we can separate these ones further so that we can be able to implement interface for different purposes. Like we have an interface for the list between the read and the write. And then you have another one now where you do the delete and finding multiple records. So that way, it's easier now to implement for different purposes without implementing all the interfaces.
What would be the benefit of separating them?
So, for example, this encounter repository.
Yes.
It can extend. Let's say now, for example, the CRUD or a basic encounter repository. And then you can have another one for maybe CRUD now, the CRUD repository.
Yeah.
So, which method do we move to CRUD and the save?
So that would have the same function.
Yes, the same. Defined by ID. Maybe the delete by ID.
It's plain delete.
Yes. And update.
Yeah. So which kind of update? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and update.
Okay.
Then you can have your list. You get a few patients. Maybe I don't know by what.
So since it's SQLite, is it, and it will be implemented by multiple models, I think it would be difficult to know exactly what the find by values will be. I mean, the find by find by fields will be like find by name, find by.
No, we are not doing that.
Yes.
Just normal. Yes. So this is now what you have here. You can have here for one for doing out the encounter repository. You can have now one for list patients, find by maybe name or find by age.
But that would restrict this interface to patients. We are supposed to use it for other models like appointment.
Okay, it's an example.
Yeah.
Yes, so okay, I get you.
So we need to make it as generic as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned separating this. So if we separate, okay, so CRUD encounter repository implements CRUD repository, right?
Yes.
Is there another interface or class that might end up implementing CRUD repository apart from encounter repository in that design?
Yes, like what if we want to do a Redis cache?
Oh, okay.
So in Redis, you don't have to update. You just delete the record and you set expiry date. Yes.
Okay.
So that when we do something with minimal implementation, we don't leave the other methods unimplemented.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. If you're going to have further implementation, that might be helpful. So I'll go with your design unless somebody else in the meeting has objections. Any objections, or just proceed? So I'll just separate this into different files. Feel free to interrupt if you have an objection or you have a different idea from what Patrick has provided. So I'll just remove it here. So they're on different files. Yeah, and that will be generic E for entity and ID for the ID. Okay, so in our default use case, we'll be implementing an encounter repository for every repository we end up using. And I need to pass those type signatures. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So this will just yeah. So we've passed the type signatures from encounter repository to CRUD repository. So depending on how encounter repository is implemented, that's the types that CRUD repository will use. So basically what I was saying is, now for our default use case, which will be interacting with SQLite, will most cases be implemented in encounter repository for the plain repositories. And then if we have a minimal use case, like Patrick mentioned, we'll be using the CRUD repository. So something like Redis, when you're doing caching, you usually just send whatever you want to get cached, then set an expiry, and when that expiry is done, you delete everything, then you set new values for whatever you send to the cache. So CRUD repository will be good for that. Yeah. So without further ado, I think maybe you can go ahead and now implement a specific repository, which is the patient repository. Oh, we already have that. So patient repository, which will implement encounter repository. And now we can pass in specific signature for it. Yes?
Oh, God. So ideally, you're just suffering now so that you understand how string is doing the thing.
Specifically, what?
Like Nelly said, like JBE and stuff, they do all these things for you. You don't have to come up with your custom repositories and whatnot. Is it?
Yes, that's true. If we were using Spring.NET JPA, we would be writing the rest endpoints by now. Exactly.
But it's really interesting, to be honest. I'm just looking at the docs and ideally that's how it's done.
Yeah. Like if you look at docs for Spring.NET JPA, you'll find it with the same name, CRUD repository, and it has these exact functions.
And then there's sort of like a super interface that is acting like a super interface for all other custom interfaces and whatnot. So kuna list CRUD repository, kuna CRUD repository, meaning.
Yeah. And you see, for them, they do more fancy things like you can have a model, and then you do the model has a specific field. Let's say, like in our case, we have patient, and the patient has like a name. You can do find by name, and Spring.NET JPA is able to resolve that into the query you wanted, which is a bit more fancy.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have the patient repository. As you can see, it's supposed to implement methods, and so it will have that functionality. So now we can just go ahead and implement this, and now at least we'll be happy knowing that any other repository we end up writing, we have the default signature available. So we just implement this and we have a valid encounter repository. Okay, now to the interesting thing. So since I think I'll hope that I'll want Spring to resolve this repository. So I'll just give it the annotation repository. I could use component here. I don't think Spring will do anything beyond component scanning. Yeah, looking at the way the annotation is documented, it won't do anything beyond component scanning. Maybe a bit of classification, but we won't be utilizing that. So I'm just adding it so that it's discoverable by Spring, and we can use IOC for it, and yeah, treat it like a bin. So instead of just going ahead to implement these functions, I think we can start with testing. And yes.
Oh, so like the difference between when I tanga stereotype.
Stereotype.
So like that stereotypic annotation like at component.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you use at component for the repository, what would be the issue?
So if you are writing a plain object that doesn't depend heavily on Spring Data JPA like we are doing, there is no difference if we used repository or component. If we just use component here, it would be fine, because what we want is for Spring to discover this patient repository and create manage it as a bin, have an instance of it available for IOC, and then do dependency injection with it. But if you're using Spring Data JPA, if you annotate with at repository, Spring Data JPA is able to discover that that's a repository, and then it would be able to do some interesting management for you, the Spring Data JPA specific functionality. For instance, if you use at repository and then though if you extend JPA repository, you don't need to use the annotation, right?
Exactly. Kennedy does not read anything in Burundi. I guess she discussed na Kennedy yo mahali walikuwa wanamfinya at repository. Okay, but it's okay. I guess like I tend to understand it as like kutumia at component could work even with services and all, but like for fine-grained, like you want to explicitly say that this is supposed to do like a thing. Because I guess at service you're gonna add component.
Yeah, Zoto is gonna add component. Like if you go to at repository, it has that component and the usual. So if you use that component, because main goal in Anga for the class to be discoverable during component scanning, right? Yeah, so if you have this or its children like at repository, at service, you will be fine.
Rod Johnson kasikia kama tunaweza mtafuta siku moja.
Who is that?
The founder of Spring.
Oh, Rod. Oh, okay. Oh, the Nini. Yeah. I think I've seen him quite his conferences.
Shall we proceed?
Okay. Yeah, so like I was saying, instead of just going ahead and implement these methods, I think we can be good boys and create a test. Boys and girls. We can be good boys and girls and create a test for it. Okay, let me utilize the ID wizard for this, that we don't end up, because I'll just be writing these and appending the word test in front of them. Okay, so that the ID will be able to generate that test for us. Not really generate the test, but kind of create the, yes?
Sorry, not a question. Just hold on. How did you do that?
Oh, the test.
For like a minute and then restricted is already test. There's a way that you did that already.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's just you.
Yeah, let me show you. So I've just deleted what we had. So the way you do it is, you see this light bulb. You just click on that, and there's this create test menu. You tap on that, and then it opens this wizard. this screen or pop-up, and the pop-up tries to autofill what the test will look like. So the class name for the test, patient repository test, and the package where you want it to be. So that's the package that will be used here. And you can include setup and tear down. So this will be just functions for setup and tearing down the test. And then you can select the functions within the class that you want to test. So for us, we want to test all of them. So we just checked all of them. And then once you're done, you can click OK. And there you go. You have the test.
Oh, that's really cool. Is there a way you can also inject mock whatever? Minimize kuwa too ambitious.
Yeah, you can do mocks, but after you have this now, you can go into doing mocks.
Automatically generate.
Oh no. This just creates it just creates the class and the functions. Yeah. If it creates the mocks, I would be worried, because now that's vibe coding. It's too close to vibe coding. Yeah. So it just generates the empty methods for you, and then you can proceed from there. Okay. Anybody has a question? Just proceed. So we have sort of a template here that we can start with. I usually prefer to have the tear down function at the bottom. Just shows that it's executed after one of the tests executes. We discussed JUnit a bit on the first episode of this. So, but if anybody has a question about JUnit, so JUnit is the test framework we're using. If you have any questions about the annotations we are seeing here, but I'll explain some of them. So this setup and teardown functions allow us to do things before and after each test. So when we run the test, there's something called test execution listeners. So they kind of check. I think JUnit also has its own implementation. Spring Test Framework also has their own implementation. But they're able to see at which stage are you running a new test, has that test concluded execution, and before and after each you can actually do some house cleaning. So for instance, you bring in all the objects you want for the test before each would be executed for that. So this can put everything you want ready for the test, and then after the test succeeds, maybe it's this delete by ID test being executed. After that test succeeds, teardown will be called, and that teardown will come and basically remove everything and run some custom code, which you have to specify on your own. It's not magic. You specify what needs to be done after, and then the next test will also begin by first teardown and then running the test, and then after the test is done, setup, run the test, and then after the test is done, you get teardown. So this particular test will not, I think it will be Spring heavy, because we're using Database Manager, and Database Manager has this at value annotation, which requires Spring application context to want it to work. So we need to set it up as Spring specific test. So for that, I think there's a blog post I did about which annotations you're supposed to use. If you notice, the validator test, we didn't have any annotations for the test because this was a plain JUnit test. But because this is a Spring one, we'll have to introduce this very nice Spring Boot test annotation. And what this Spring Boot test annotation will do is bring the bootstrap the Spring application context for us to run the test. So that application context will handle things like getting values from application.properties files and some other things that are Spring specific. I don't think we need any other annotation. So if you have Spring Boot test, last time I was including at extend with, which tells the Spring extension. So this tells JUnit that we are running this test under Spring. So, but that is already done by the Spring Boot test annotation. You notice there's extend with them. So we don't need to do that. And yeah. So you can see this, can look at docs a bit. Spring bootstrap with that second annotation is the one that we would be missing if we just use extend with. And from the docs, it says bootstrap with an annotation that can be applied to a test class to define material that is used to determine how to bootstrap. This is the key part: how to bootstrap the Spring Test Context Framework. So Spring Test Context Framework would give us Spring Application Context, which again gives us the additional functionality that is Spring specific. Yeah, there's a bit more here, but this is the one that we are concerned with. Yeah, I'll just go to that. There's some imports here that now we don't need. So for this test of ours to run, we need to, so let me just briefly ignore setup, but okay, let me briefly ignore setup. Let's focus on one individual test. Let's focus on this save, and I'll change the name slightly. Should save patient test. So this test is supposed to determine that we're able to create a new patient on the SQLite database. So the interesting thing, the ingredients we need for this test is, one, we need SQLite database connection. So we need to be able to connect to the database. We need a patient, and we need so we have the connection, we have the patient, and we need a repository, the patient repository, for us to run it. So thinking of these ingredients, since we have Spring, and Spring has the IOC container, which has all the beans, essentially should have all the beans that we need, we have two options. We can go ahead and auto-wire the components that are annotated with that are discoverable by Spring during component scanning. So an example is Encounter Database Manager has this at component annotation, which means it's discoverable. So if we use AutoWire Encounter Database Manager, dependency injection will kick in, and voila, we have an instance. Encounter repository, patient repository also has this annotation, which means this is discoverable by Spring, so we can just go ahead and use AutoWired for it. Or that's one option, and the way that would look is we would have at AutoWired, perhaps private Encounter Database Manager, and we bring in the repository by saying patient repository, AutoWired patient repository, and yeah, maybe it will be the only repository here, so you can do that. So this will bring in the components that we need for the test. The patient, we can create a new instance of patient and use it for testing within the test function. So that's one way we can do it. The other way is by creating a configuration class that is specifically meant to tell Spring that we need this and this bean for this test, nothing more. And the advantage of using a configuration class is if you have a lot of other objects available in the code or other beans, Spring will not try to load them for the test. It will ignore them and only load the ones that you have in your configuration. So just as an example, I'll just create a class here. In fact, okay, let it just be under patient. So I'll just create a class and call that patient repository. Come on. Patient repository test config. So this test config should be essentially define the objects that we need for this test. So I'll just annotate it with configuration. And that just tells Spring that it's a configuration. And again, for component scanning, I bet this has component, yeah, just for component scanning. So component scanning is when the test begins, Spring will look around find, oh, this is annotated with configuration. Okay, it's one of the beans that I'm using for this test, and it's a configuration bean, so let me check what configuration is in there because I'll use it to bootstrap the test. So here we can have the beans that we need, like I mentioned. Specifically, we need this. So we can define a patient will create in the test method. So we can define the database connection manager in the repository. So I'll just say I use the @bean annotation. So @bean tells Spring that this is a bean you can inject into the test, and public encounter database manager. So for the database manager, just use the name, no worries, and return new encounter database manager. So Spring will handle the bootstrapping of this object. So it will deal with this annotation for us if we annotate with that @bean annotation. And we can bring in the repository by using that patient repository, and then I include patient repository, return new patient repository. And this is simple because the individual beans don't even have fields, so it's easy to initialize them. If they had fields, you'd just declare that and then pass it. For instance, if encounter manager dependent on patient repository, you could just pass in that function, and some auto wiring will be done for you. Injection will be done for you. And the way we use this is within the test. Now, if you go back to the test, within the Spring Boot test annotation, you can use, there's a field there, this field classes, that allows you to pass in the configuration class that you're using for the test. There are some interesting other things that you could pass here. This is one of them that you'd use for this. And you just pass in the field, you define that field, and then you can pass in multiple configuration classes if you have several, or you can just pass in one. Like in our case, we're just using one, and it's patient something config. So this will bring in the beans that we need, and whenever now we are running the test, when the test is being bootstrapped, all the other beans or objects will be ignored, and only the ones that have been declared in patient repository test config will be available for our test. And if you try to auto-wire something that was not declared, I expect that the Spring should fail to bring that in. So maybe just as an example, let's just any question about what I've just described? As I wait, I'll just create this new instance of patient. Patient DTO, patient. So I'm just importing that so that we don't have to can shorten that a bit. So we have a UUID, we'll have a name, and we have a DOB. Local date dot of. I prefer to put this out. So DOB is equals to local date of 1990, maybe 0504 12. Okay, don't need to do 04. It's just 4. Okay, that can serve as the DOB value. So maybe this should save patient test. We'll just check that that patient can be stored in saved. Let me give this a name, like Bruce Lee, and UUID. How do I get a UUID? I usually prefer using static values for tests, so I could easily call UUID.random UUID. Yes. Oh, okay. So I could call UUID dot random UID and to string and get a UID, but this UID will be dynamic. It will change for every test. So if I want to do an assertion for the UID, it might not be convenient. So it's good to use static values. The same for date. Don't use local date.now for the test, because that means you can't assert the date in a detailed manner. So it's good to use static values. Okay, so we have sort of a valid patient there. I'll go ahead and call our repository dot save, which is responsible for saving the patient and passing the patient. So the way this is handled is, if it succeeds, we expect it to return true. For now, it's returning false, very obviously. So I'll call this resolved or is saved. And now we can use an assertion, maybe assert that is saved dot is true. And of course, we're using assert j for this. I'll just import assertions from assert j, the static import. Assert that. Okay, and yeah. Yes.
Why don't you write it and then import it? I mean, you love typing.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that writes Java, you have to kind of love typing.
I mean,
if I was writing C, maybe. but you're right. We could, instead of going through this, also because we are kind of
planning.
Yeah, we are kind of learning. It would be good to explicitly type that we are using assert j, so that somebody doesn't say, oh, yeah, all of a sudden. Yeah, so you could do import and then check that. And you see, weird thing, it's importing this weird class that I don't know. And also, again, the confusion, because now you have Hamcrest here, and we just need assert j. Yeah. So you could do that. You could do that. But yeah, when I type it like this here, and I usually like it because I know explicitly what I'm using.
Okay.
Instead of the ID can import the same library, but with a different packaged structure with the same name. So you think you're using java.util.list when in fact you're using java.awt.list. It can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Happened hiyo sana ilikuwa issue yangu na Java na Jakarta, like for the validation
Yeah, you see, now with that, and then you package, you run it in an earlier version of Java. Actually, it's one of the breaking functionality. So if you're importing something, one of the Java dot something, it will fail. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and run that individual test. We expect it to fail, of course, since we haven't written any functionality, but the manner in which it fails is also important. So the way it fails is expected true, got false, which means it was able to find. So this is good news. So we got expected value is true, but actual is false. That means it took the patient that we created, it found this repository. So the repository was perfectly initialized. It passed that patient to this save function, and of course it executed this function, and the function returns false, and we're expecting true on the other side. So the positive side is we know that patient repository is being initialized as expected. Yes. Any comment? Okay. So I think this creates opportunity for us to see whether my assertion that you need to specify everything in config if we decide to use classes, and we can go ahead and remove this patient repository being, just to see if Spring will maybe have a stroke if we try to use this patient repository that's not defined there and we've used outwired. Okay, so I think I'm seeing something interesting here. So the error we are getting is error creating bin with the name patient repository test and unsatisfied dependency expressed through field repository. So this field. So it was not able to find it since we've told it hey, don't bring every other bean in this project. Bring the ones declared in this configuration file. So if patient repository is not declared there, the test will fail. Basically, Spring will fail to bootstrap the test. And yeah, so you get a different error. And again, as I mentioned, if you want to bring everything that's in your project for the test, you can just remove this classes field, run the test, and the outwired annotation should be able to kick in and pull it, because Spring Boot test will bring everything that's available in the project. Yeah, so you can see the individual test is failing the way it failed last time. But if you want faster tests, it's good to specify exactly which beans you're using for the test. Okay. If there's any questions about what we've just done, just unmute or post in the comments. We'll check it out. Okay, so I think the next assignment is let's make the test pass. Now that we've seen it fail, which is good. So for this test to pass is we need to actually save the object in the database and return true to the test and tell it, oh yeah, we succeeded. The way we do that is for this test to be executed, we need the Encounter Database Manager that handles our database connections. So I know Ian will say we do field injection here instead of annotations. So I'll just go ahead and do field injection. Ama nimedanganya. Nikitumia annotation utakasirika.
No. Depends. I guess it depends on where the code is going.
Okay. So there's two ways you can inject fields into your Spring classes. You can use field injection. You can use field injection. You can use constructor injection. Field injection, I think, is the one that we used annotation. Actually, I was saying the opposite. Ian prefers constructor injection. So field injection is we would do auto-add like we did with the test, and that would inject this database manager object. So it does dependency injection like that, or you use constructor injection, which is just declare it as final, and you get the constructor parameter. I don't like using this IDE magics.
No, just use it, man. It's already given you.
But you see, somebody who is observing this for the first time, if they see it being typed, they can follow easily. Yeah.
I wouldn't like waste time. I don't know writing. I already know what a constructor is. But alternatively,
Yeah.
as you're having it final, you could also use the @required args constructor. It's an annotation you put it below the @repository.
Oh, yeah. So all the fields will follow it.
Yeah, so as long as you have like any quote unquote immutable fields you're passing, unaweza toa to like the constructor.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you don't need to write the constructor.
No.
Oh, so the constructor is like written for you behind the scene.
Yeah. So whenever you just like have final, so this is the required args constructor, like your time unafanya like the dependency injection, and then you have the things you're injecting, you have them as final. So you just use your.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I've seen you use it, but I didn't know how it worked.
I use it every other time.
So the docs
Sorry.
yeah. Oh, just proceed.
Nilikuwa nileta argument ingine.
Oh yeah, please do.
Yeah, the outwired thing. Like I understand it says that it normally has an issue when it comes to testing. So when I introduce like telling, it's difficult to test when you use the outwired.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone knows that philosophy. Anyone?
Yeah. Maybe others can tell us, because for me I've always seen it as a style thing, like a style choice.
Outwired.
Like you just don't want a lot of annotations in your code, so you use constructor injection. But somebody in the audience anaweza tuambia if there is actually a technical change, a technical difference.
I understand like whenever people people are talking about like how to do the dependency injection, like wanasema there's the set away, there's the field injection, and then there's the constructor way. So I normally liken constructor, now the required acts constructor, because ideally what they're doing is the same thing. So you're having all your fields as final, and then you create the constructor, I want to get the required acts constructor. So for me, the two work the same way. But now when it comes to the out-wired, it's normally discouraged. The reason being, when testing, it's normally a challenge. So like honestly, I've not like tried, I don't know, having it using out-wired and then testing. Just did try.
Maybe we'll try it on this one to see. Yes, Kennedy.
So, assume atutumii Lombok.
Mm-hmm.
So, because you see, things about Lombok, for example, in this project, if we assume the work the Lombok is doing is very minimal, not tunaweza jifanyia.
Okay.
We don't need that library for this, like for example, in this project.
Okay.
And in very, very, very many projects that we do today, even in the microservices world, you don't need Lombok.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the things you find yourself doing manual because the project is very small. In microservices world, whatever you say microservices is, the application moja iko na patient, inadeal na patient peke yake.
Exactly. Yeah.
Na kwa hiyo application moja hauhitaji these many dependencies to deal with patient. It is a very small application and you want it to be very lean and you want to be almost dependency free. Being dependency free means you are using the JDK feature, which has a very big advantage on your side.
Okay.
Rather than bringing in these external dependencies. So in those cases, it is very, very beautiful kufanya venye sama nafanya, like manual writing constructors, blah, 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 blah. Because this akina sijui required constructors, it is popularity too. I consider them cargo cults in some way. Let's be honest. Also, the auto-wired, the cases that people say at the tests may be problematic, in 99% of the time, those cases, wewe mwenyewe hautazi encounter.
Okay.
So if I use auto-wired and any other person use required as constructor or whatever, the test that I am doing, hizo cases zenye wanasema auto-wired is not good for testing, hata sitazi encounter because kwani how am I doing the testing? I'm not writing a very, very complex application that those cases that they are saying the auto-wired will not work, zitaniguza. So, being people saying auto-wired will not work is still somehow a popularity thing. It is people saying, oh, in Spring Boot, this is how we do it, so everybody falls for it. It is not like that I'm doing it because I have that case that I have that it did not work. It is that all people are doing it, so let me do it. And in my very honest opinion, if the experience kitu, then there's no need of me doing it.
Exactly.
Let me experience first and then I do it now, knowing that nilifanya kitu ikakataa juu and this and this and this. So let me do this and this and this.
That's a fair point, to be honest. But like for me to like fully respond, I have to go and do research on my own so that I don't answer things blankly. But I guess like I'd definitely opt for some of the annotations because I just want to make my life easy. And yeah, but I get the point. Like doing it the Java way is cool, and then the other people find using annotations and whatnot cooler. So I guess I'll have to do my research and then possibly the next time we meet and come with my findings, possibly because I see you're taking the fly. But thanks for the insight.
Whoever raised their hand. Annette?
Yeah, no worries. I think, also like adding to it, it depends again with your use case. So, for instance, if you are like loading something again, for instance, I wouldn't recommend utumie auto-wired. Auto-wired usually comes with let binding. That's why it makes testing hard. But again, venye Kennedy amesema, if your use case is small, maybe you might not necessarily need to load something eagerly anyway. So everything on pros and cons. But for me, I'd say it goes with their use cases. So in a case where kama you're on the, let's say on the consumer part of your service, it makes sense kutumia auto-wired. But from what I've come to learn the hard way, I think constructor injection is usually like preferred, especially if you are like loading something really quick and you don't need advantages like late binding and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Kennedy.
So, what do you mean by loading something eagerly? It affects what then auto-wired? Like, because, okay, are you assuming that every application is using JBE and I am loading something through via those relationships at JBE or something? Ama, what do you mean eagerly in any project?
Okay, so high level, early binding inamaanisha, wait, is there anyone who's not Kenyan? Okay, so high level, early binding often means that you are resolving your dependencies at compile time, and then late binding often means you are resolving your dependencies at runtime. So early binding inamaanisha like almost with me Swahili, man. Most of the dependencies are like non-upfront, and then it's like, yeah, compile time pretty much. The late binding pretty much means at runtime, kind of high level.
And please just use Swahili, don't worry. We'll translate for those who don't understand.
Okay.
Kennedy, does that answer your question? Do you still have Kennedy?
I prefer kusema no.
Okay. He's finding the right but I think that's yeah, I think bottom line we've come to, so there are two main issues here. So one, it can be a style issue if whether you're using auto-wired or constructor injection or field injection. Sorry, auto-wired is actually field injection. So whether you're using field injection, whether you're using auto-wired or constructor injection, might not affect your project if it's like a microservice. Like in our case, it seems like a microservice. It's a small application. It might not really affect things in terms of maybe runtime or how long it takes to execute the tests. But if the scope of the project is much larger and you're doing more sophisticated things, maybe you have something data JPA there, you've configured Hibernate to do some interesting things, you might need to do some optimizations that your tests execute quickly or your application bootstraps quickly. And that depends with the complexity of the application. I think that's what we've agreed on, right? At least that's what I've gotten.
Yeah.
But if the project is simple enough, it's a style issue. Kama yako Ian is a style thing.
Ndakuja na research.
Okay, before kuje na evidence.
Okay, but like the points do like make a lot of them. I just have to like concretize whatever it is I know to back them up.
Yeah, maybe the optimization, the early optimization would be if you don't need this stuff, you keep your final Java package small by removing Lombok from your dependencies if you're not using it. Because I think from my experience, keeping your dependencies small also, just makes your application lean, and at runtime it's really easy to bootstrap it, and the JVM is able to manage it easily, as opposed to if you are using a million dependencies. When you're doing is even, is odd, you are pulling a dependency like a JavaScript developer. So it's good to write some things on your own. I don't depend too much on third-party libraries, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense. Oh, I don't know, off topic. Lombok is an island in Asia. I just wanted to get to know.
Yeah, they like those parts of Asia. If you look at South Asia, even Jakarta is an island.
Yeah, even Jakarta.
Even Java,
Java.
even Java is an island, Uko. So they go there for vacations, I think, guys that work at Oracle. So when they go back to Silicon Valley, they're like, that experience was nice. Let's name this Jakarta. Okay. Okay, so let's try and get this test to pass. So I think I'm obliged to, until we need Lombok, maybe we can remove it as a dependency, just to keep the application small. I hope Ian, you don't feel too bad if you remove it.
I had that no issues, man.
Okay, I've just commented. If you get to a point where we need it, I'll just uncomment until part of the.
Most likely one depends.
Okay.
Labu.
Yeah.
Okay. Lakini unapenda kufanya nini? Oh, kuna nini? There is an annotation you possibly need to remove.
Oh,
Really
yeah.
hard.
At required something else. This one.
Yeah.
But it's something interesting I've learned. I didn't know this annotation was even from Lombok. So when you guys brought up that discussion, when I realized that it's from Lombok, I thought it's a Spring or a Jakarta annotation. So at least I learned something there. Okay, so then I'll just go ahead and do the constructor. So we're doing constructor injection for this, and we have encounter database manager, encounter database manager. Okay, let me just use the full name. And database manager is equals to encounter database manager. We could end up using this, yeah, but I've seen people discourage this use of this in other programming languages, because I apparently it's a whole copy of the patient repository, and though this doesn't happen in Java. In Java, you can use this safely, just to specify that I'm referring to the class variable, not the argument that's been passed through the constructor. Let's say they had the same name like this. Yeah, if they have the same name, you can use this to differentiate so that there is no confusion over, hey, which is which. So you can just do this. But in some languages, it actually leads to some very strange side effects. I'm talking about Swift. Swift has that problem. So we really avoid using what in there is called self, because it leads to some very strange side effects. But anyway, I'm digressing. So now we have database manager. I think IntelliJ is just not happy that we are not using it, but we will be using it. So now within our save method, I prefer this to be the first one. Yeah. So now within our save method, we can go ahead and write the code for actually saving an object. So to save an object, we need a database connection. That is what database manager is here for. So it will give us a connection. I like to use the syntax that Joe taught us last time. I hope I'll remember. Database manager, get connection. So this should give us a connection. So I'm just checking if that is instance of connection. If it is not, or it's null, then return false, fail early. I think that's how it was written. Oh, no, what am I missing? Cannot be applied to SQL connection. It has to be the whole thing. Okay. Joe, have I written it correctly?
Oh, your screen disappeared a bit. Let me. Oh, it's fine, but okay. Actually, you don't need to go this way. Uh, you can just use just is equals to null, because the purpose of pattern matching is that if you're instantiating the connection, you have to use that connection. It will make sense now.
Oh, I'm planning to use it down here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then it's okay. It's
Okay.
okay then.
Yeah, because what I want is early exit. If we are not able to get a connection, then there's nothing we are doing here. Let's get out of this function, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, nice. For those who still don't, we recorded the previous episode, so it explains this. But basically, what we are doing is we're using the old instance of, should I call it old? The legacy instance of function available in Java. But in this case, there's additional functionality where when you check instance of, if the check succeeds, you can actually obtain a valid object, which is previously you don't create this connection variable here. So we'll be able to get this connection object and use it within the curly braces. But by adding this exclamation, it makes the connection object available outside the curly braces. So what will happen is if we try to obtain a connection and we either get a null one or an invalid connection or some other object that is not instance of connection, this code will exit early. If we get a valid connection, that connection object will be available for us to use down here outside the scope of this curly brace.
And no point of using the curly braces.
Oh yeah, by the way. I usually use this syntax to laugh at Kotlin developers because they say their language is concise, but you have to use curly brace for if statements that are single line. They don't have that functionality.
Sorry.
Yeah, you have to use curly brace. But for us, it's, yeah. Or am I wrong? I've written some Kotlin. I had to place curly braces when using if blocks.
Nikiandika Kotlin, I don't think sijui labda walichange kwa sababu sidhani ni worth for small statements like single if.
You can skip that initial curly brace.
I guess so. Unless naandika Kotlin ya Cambodia.
I could be wrong also. Maybe they've changed the language a bit. So let's say we have sorry if this takes long, I'll just skip it. So let me just create a val check. Maybe let's say check is equals to false. The madness we were talking about in the other call about types. Anyway, if check in here it's print, right? Print happy. Kotlin.
3 resources you must.
Okay, let's make it true. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm wrong. Nimechokoza watu wa Kotlin bure. So you can actually write it without the curly brace. Yeah. But I think in some version of the language they didn't have that, so I found it funny. So we see how we obtain a connection here. So now we can call prepare statement, and we don't necessarily need to, or we do. Okay, I think we do for this. So first of all, since we are running on SQLite, we'll need to define the query. Serve patient query, and the serve patient query is just insert into the table name. It would be perhaps good to make this something like a table name a constant, but in this case I'll just proceed to copy the name that we used there. So the table is patient. So insert into patient values. Those who, if I write the SQL incorrectly, this idea values. So the values will be coming from this patient with this entity object. How do I concat this? I can use prepared statement. So when you use prepared statement, you can use question mark as placeholders for the values you need to use. Maybe to demonstrate that, let me just split screen the table schema here, so we can see what the table looks like. So we have this UID field, we have name and DOB, so it's 3 fields. So I can just do that. Yeah, and I think with that we can call prepare statement and pass in the query, save patient query, and notice so we have the statement. After that, just keep the schema closed there so that we know what we are doing. And since it's a prepared statement, we can pass in now the field. So we don't need to do concatenation here, which is actually safe. The PHP SQL injection security flaws that were there, I know we all know about them. When you do concatenation, then somebody passes it a weird value. So here, at least with this prepared statement, you can validate that. So the first string, which is a UID, is a string. So we just call entity dot UID, and you can just pass in the other values. The name, you can pass in the name. Now things get spooky and interesting when we are passing DOB. Okay, I need to change the field order. So 1, 2, 3. What is the problem? Set string. Oh, okay. So this whole function is has potential to throw an SQL exception. I'm tempted to make it checked or add a try catch. Sorry, make it unchecked. Is that unchecked? Yeah, or add a try catch. If I specified that this function can throw an SQL exception, it means I'll need to modify the interface, which makes sense because all of them will have the potential to throw an SQL exception, except if it's maybe Redis. If we are planning to use this for other persistence type objects, then it would be unfair to change the signature to limit it to SQLite. So I think here I'll just use a try catch to kind of help with that, so that you don't change the signature of the function. So I'll just plug in a try catch, and this will catch SQL exception. Yes. For those who looking at the time, I've just concluded, so don't panic. I'm just hoping we can finish this piece before we close. And if an exception occurs, we'll return false, which is not very good. We should probably return something more detailed, but we'll do that next time. So I'll just print stack trace here, which is very irresponsible, but we will do something more interesting there. So about this entity DOB, we need to write datetime utils, some date passing function that would convert a local date into a string representation of that local date. But I'm seeing we are 10:22. Should we continue until we make this particular test pass, or you guys prefer we close? Okay, let's get a thumbs up for getting at least one test to pass before we close. Okay, one vote. Okay, so let's get it to pass, which means we'll need to write a parser for this date. Like a typical Java developer, I'll need to add a utils class in the core folder, datetime utils, and this datetime utils should have a function for converting, should convert a local date to string, so that you can store that in SQLite, and it receives local date. So for now, I'll return null, and I'll create the test for it. It is one test, no need for setup a teardown. And now we are on the daytime utils test. So what we expect is we can have a local date, like let's say date is equals to local date dot of 1900 maybe 24th New Year, that's Christmas Eve. And what we expected string will be 1900 1224. And now we can call that daytime utils function, which in this case I think should be static. Don't need to create a whole new instance. So our actual string is equals to daytime utils dot local date, and then we pass in the date, and now we can just plug in an assertion. So import static assertion from assert.j, assert that actual string dot is equal to expected string. So that should be our minimal test for that. And it fails, cannot convert. Oh, okay, it fails here, which is not where it should fail. In fact, I could just go ahead and be sneaky. Okay, no, let me not. Let me just comment this, that I don't have too many concepts running concurrently. So we just have this simple test that takes a date and expects a string by calling the function that we defined. We expect the test to fail so that we can write that function. Oh, okay. We changed the signature for patient repository. Now it requires an encounter database manager field. Remember the configuration class we wrote? So now we need to change the nature of this a bit, which I think that should suffice. You can just pass in the bean because this function will create the bean, so you can just pass it in. Spring will handle the internal details of how that whole thing will work. So before I go to that, okay, let me just focus on daytime utils test. Hopefully we won't be interrupted with the other test again. So we have this simple test. Let's just try and run it, see what happens. And yeah, so expected 1900 1224 got null, and it's returning null because our actual function returns null. So now we need to write the function. I think we'll use daytime formatter. So the package, we're using java.time, so we'll use the date formatter from that. Then can pass in the style. How does this work? Anybody remember this quickly so that I can? I think I pass in the pattern, which will be maybe YYY, day, and sorry, MM, then day. This can be lowercase. So that will give us the daytime formatter. And we can use that formatter to now convert this to string. Formatter.format local date. I'm assuming I'm preaching to the choir here regarding this function. If anybody doesn't know how it essentially works, you can just interrupt or type on the chat. Okay, preaching to the choir. So let me go back to the test, and now I'm hoping it will pass. Okay, so the test has passed, which means our datetime converter works. Clean it up a bit. And now, since our datetime converter works, we can go to the repository. Yes?
Could you go back to datetime utility?
Yes.
Okay, I want to mention something that is not really relevant, but for the love of interfaces.
Yes.
You could change this class to interface, and then you remove this public. Because by default, the interfaces are static public by default. So you have that sort of thing, which is very appealing in my eyes, and maybe unappealing to other people's eyes.
I get it. I get what you mean. So I'm hoping that doesn't affect the test. Let me just be sure, because
It doesn't.
yeah, I've never thought about writing it like that in my whole life since I was innocent. Starting with Java, I always knew interfaces were places where you declare abstract methods for implementation in concrete classes, not where you define actual functions.
Those were actually some utility. Okay, I don't know if in the JDK they have some utility methods inside the interface, but currently some people do write utility methods inside an interface, which for me there's no like a big deal, because if I'm declaring a class and having public static methods there, unless my utility requires other private methods in that class. If they don't require other private method in that class, I'll go with interface. And even in interface, which can be a bad design, I can use private default if I need to have separate function to do different thing, and then use to the public utility method. But yeah, it was just a by the way.
Yeah, but if you get to that point where you're using default, then you can agree you'll be over engineering, right?
Okay, in this case, for utilities, yes, but in the case of contracts and all that, no.
Yeah, for contracts it makes sense, but if it's just a utility class and so a utility interface in this case, and you get yourself to a point where now you are trying to morph it to behave like static functions in an actual class, you agree you'll not be writing Java, you'll be writing Rust.
Somehow, yes.
You guys have seen Rust code. It's keyword after keyword after keyword. So if you're trying to read a piece of code, the engineering of that code alone already scares you. You can't get to the domain problem. Those double full colors that they use all the time. So you find like a function has like 20 of them, one line. Yeah. Yeah. It's like names. It's very confusing if you are reading it and you're not like a Rust developer. You see that syntax. Like for me personally, the only reason I haven't touched Rust is I just saw that syntax and I'm like, this is the highway to hell type of language. This can't go to positive places. Just over engineering. But that's my opinion. Okay, thanks for pointing that out, Kennedy. So we could have this as an interface. I'm always used to having a class and then having static methods in the class. I wonder is there any runtime optimization that comes from this that is different from using static methods in classes?
Okay, I cannot answer that right now, but there's a guy called Adam Bien who does this and says there's some the performance difference between this and class, because there's no instance creator or something, but I didn't understand him so well because a static does not need a class in initialization or something. I don't know what he was meaning by whatever he was saying. I got this way of writing from him.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't consider to listen to the advantages or disadvantages. I just saw it being cool. So from the cool side of it, I started writing it.
Yeah, and it's actually really cool. And my guess is every time we declare a class, maybe there was that the JVM has to have like an instantiator or have some metadata prepared for handling that class during maybe JIT at runtime, which if you define it as an interface, the JVM doesn't need to do that. Maybe worth researching.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe you can do a blog post about it next weekend. I mean next week for anybody who's curious. I'll also look into it. I'll try and see what was the difference. But at least for now we know it works because our test still passes. But that's super new to me. I've never thought about doing it like that. Okay. So now we have our converter here. We might go ahead and write the other way around, but like Robert Martin says, don't write any more production code than is necessary to make your test pass. So we will not step the gas. So right now we're just trying to get that save test to pass, this particular test, save patient test. This is our focus. All the production code we are writing right now is to get this test to pass, which it is. I'm sure it's still failing. I hope not for different reasons this time. Yeah, still failing for the same reason. So let's continue hustling for this. So we have our save patient query. We had the statement. So we were stopped here where our entity had DOB is a local date and we are trying to store a string on the SQLite side. So what we need to do is just convert this to string. So I can call datetime utils and local date to string, and we can call it on that function directly, or we can be good people and extract this so that it's easy for the next guy to read. And I can say var patient DOB is equals to that, so that the next guy can understand that, oh, okay, we took entity, converted that, sorry, so that we would end up using it here. And also it shortens this function, so that helps. So now we have the statement. We can go ahead and execute it. So don't need, when you do execute queries, when you need a result set, which is like a select statement or something of the sort. So in this case, we're just executing a simple SQL prepared statement. When you execute, we are able to get a Boolean value, which is nice from SQLite. Actually, on the C layer of this, it actually does Booleans, though it does ones and zeros. C doesn't have Boolean type. Remember, all this Java layer of SQLite still has to call the C layer. So that's it has to interact with the C libraries. So this executes the statement in this prepare statement object, which may be any kind, and on the return, true if the first result is a result set object, false if the first result is an update count, or there is no result. True if the first result is a result set object, false if the first result is an update count, or there is no result. That's interesting. So it's not whether the SQL query succeeded or not. It's just the nature of the result. Okay, that's interesting. So it means we shouldn't use it. And here we can just return true. One thing we can do is whenever SQL queries are executed on the SQLite side, you're usually able to get a warning. So if anything goes wrong, so maybe we can check for that, get warnings, and if there is warning. This warning I think is just as it's actually a complex object, so it runs a SQL warning. I thought it was just a simple string. So if anything fails during the execution of that query, it will keep that warning, and then if we request for it, that will be available for us. So maybe we can add additional logic here and say if warning is not equal to null and warning dot get message dot is blank. If it's not blank, then we can fail. Otherwise, we will succeed. Your statement can be simplified. Okay, I'll ignore that. So one is not equal to null, and warning the message is blank. Return false, otherwise return true. Yeah, we could make this a bit more sophisticated and actually return like the list of warnings, but that would mean we change the signature of save, and we already agreed that that save function is under CRUD repository, and it can be used by not just SQLite, but also it can be used by something like Redis. So I'll avoid modifying the signature. Okay, so we don't need this. So I think it should be clear. So I'll just go to the test. If it's not, please just feel free to interrupt. And let's see how our test performs. Oh, voila. The test succeeds, which means we were able to insert that patient. So now if we run this test again, unfortunately I expect it to fail. Yeah. So the reason why it should fail is when we ran the test the first time, we get a SQL constraint for exception for the primary key, because we are trying to insert an object that we already inserted into the test database. Unique constraint failed for patient.uid. So what we need now is go back to the issue of setup and teardown. And in this case, yes? Okay. So what we need to do is, before each test is run, we delete everything in the that was in the database. We run the test. After the test is executed, then again delete everything so that the next test finds the database fresh. So we'll do a setup here. So notice we are not writing production rules. This is just test code. So we are not breaking the TDD rules. So here what we will do is we need a way to reset that database. So currently we still don't have a way to, we need like a drop database function on the database manager. So this drop database function will be able to clear the database because right now it's heading to 11. Okay, let me just describe it. I'll not go into too much detail. So I'll just go into the SQLite database, the test one that we're using, this one, and encounter DB test. And just check the schema. So it has that, then select from patient. Select all from. Yeah, so you'll see the test database still holds the value that we used for the test, this one. So what we need to do next time is we'll need to write a setup and teardown function that would delete all the values that were created during the test, so that when the next test is executed, it doesn't interfere with the result that we're getting. Essentially, we don't have those objects still dangling in the database. So that's what we will write next time, this setup and teardown function for the test. At least we've gotten one test to work, at least first round, until we populated the database. So I'm seeing time has really moved. So I think we can pause it here. We'll resume exactly from this point. I'll publish the code on GitHub like we always do. And I think for now, maybe I can receive any final comments or thoughts before we call it weekend.
That was fun, man. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I wish we could go up to morning, but yeah, it's...
No. Don't do that. Don't do that.
But it's fun. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So any thoughts, Ian, about the format? Any way we can make things better? Or anybody?
No, I feel like this is sort of like one of the best sessions where we are not like after completion, we're after like understanding the first things. And now I have like a couple of things to go look at, so it's really important, at least for me. It's not like we don't have to rush. We can do it we can take as long as we can, but then goal is really like understanding, because like when you're getting like inputs from like when you mainly suggested a few things and then we look into them, Joe, Kennedy again. So that's perfect, man.
I love it also.
Yeah.
Any other feedback about today? Last time Kennedy was complaining that the time was short. So what did you think about the time?
Perfecto.
Kennedy complained about the time.
Yeah, we were ending it at 9. 8 to 9, and we had like started at 8:15, 8:30. So it was like we were just starting and then it's ending.
That's very limited time.
Okay. Yeah. So, any other feedback or thoughts? So don't forget, this is every Friday. So I hope to see you guys next Friday. We build this project, we finish it, we pick up another one. I think it will be interesting, and we end up learning a lot in the process and sharing. What I like about this, it's not necessarily even learning technical details. It's about learning design ideas, like how do you design your code, how do I design my code, and getting ways to like improve that. So I think that's super awesome. Yeah, Nelly saying this is super cool, first joining but seen so many interfaces. Yeah. So yeah, please join us on the next one, so that we can steal some of your ideas also, like we did today, and make our code base better. Okay. See, I let you guys go and enjoy your weekend. For now, I'll also go chill, enjoy my weekend, and I'll see you guys again next week, Friday. Have a very wonderful weekend, and thank you so much for taking the time. Mubarikiwe. The code will be available on GitHub. I'll post on the WhatsApp, and I'll also post it on Twitter, so you can also go through the code after. Do a postmortem.
Okay.
Bye everyone.
Bye.